There is something quietly unsettling about the way society teaches us to see wealth. We're trained, almost from childhood, to equate richness with the shine on a car, the label on a jacket, the square footage of a home. We're told that success must be visible to be real. And then a book like The Millionaire Next Door arrives like a soft earthquake, revealing a truth so simple and yet so profoundly countercultural that you almost resist believing it at first. Most truly wealthy people do not look wealthy at all. They are not the ones broadcasting their prosperity. They are the ones quietly building it. This book doesn't introduce you to celebrities, CEOs, or financial prodigies. Instead, it invites you into the homes of people you might easily overlook. A mechanic, a small business owner, a teacher, a couple who never earned extravagant incomes but built enormous safety, freedom, and dignity out of ordinary paychecks. The authors call them prodigious accumulators of wealth, but what makes them remarkable is not their possessions, it is their mindset. They live below their means, not out of fear, but out of purpose. They treat money not as a tool for showcasing identity, but as a tool for building autonomy. And this quiet discipline, practiced for decades, becomes the cornerstone of fortunes that remain invisible to the casual observer. If you've ever driven through a suburban neighborhood and looked at a modest house, a battered mailbox, an aging car, curtains drawn against the late afternoon sun, you might never guess that inside sits someone with a seven-figure net worth. But The Millionaire Next Door teaches you that this scene is far more likely than the reverse. Wealth, real wealth, hides in plain sight. It grows in the shadows of ordinary routines, in households where consumption never outpaces earnings, in families who choose stability over status. And once you start to understand this, the way you perceive the world begins to shift. What you once admired begins to feel shallow. What you once ignored begins to look like wisdom. The book introduces a concept that feels almost like a revelation: the difference between high income and high net worth. Many people assume the two are the same. They see a doctor earning $400,000 a year and assume wealth is guaranteed. But the authors show, time and again, that high earners often become prisoners of lifestyle expansion. The moment income rises, spending rises faster. Bigger homes, luxury cars, private schools, premium everything. They build a financial structure so fragile that a single disruption, a job loss, a divorce, a recession, can send the entire facade crumbling. Meanwhile, the millionaire next door quietly invests, quietly saves, quietly avoids debt, quietly builds a fortress brick by brick. But the heart of this book is not numbers, it is psychology. It forces you to confront why so many people chase the appearance of wealth rather than the substance of it. Why the desire to impress strangers often overpowers the desire to protect ourselves. Why freedom is sacrificed for image. Why the present moment gets prioritized over the future self who will one day either thank us or curse us. And as you read, you start to recognize pieces of yourself in these patterns, the rationalizations, the impulses, the tiny decisions that compound negatively over time. The book becomes a mirror, and in that reflection you see not judgment, but possibility. You begin to understand that millionaires next door share a common, almost serene clarity about what money is meant to do. It is meant to provide control over time, not validation, not admiration, not envy. Time, the time to choose how to work, when to rest, and what to pursue without fear of financial collapse. This understanding partners naturally with frugality, not the kind laced with discomfort or deprivation, but a frugality born from alignment. These people don't feel deprived because their spending matches their values. They spend on what matters and ignore what doesn't, knowing that every unnecessary purchase steals a little bit of their future freedom. Their stories teach a truth many of us resist. Wealth is not an act, but a behavior repeated thousands of times. It is small choices, invisible to others, that accumulate into something extraordinary. Packing lunch instead of eating out isn't just about saving a few dollars, it's about practicing consistency. Choosing a reliable used car isn't just practicality, it's a declaration that your ego does not control your financial life. Investing each month, no matter how small the amount, isn't about chasing returns, it's about honoring the slow, quiet mathematics of compounding. These habits form the architecture of a life where money becomes a steady companion, not a constant source of stress. And as you absorb these stories, your perception of what it means to be rich begins to shift from surface level glamour to deep, enduring stability. The millionaire next door isn't trying to escape the spotlight, he simply doesn't need it. His confidence isn't constructed from possessions, it comes from preparation. When emergencies happen, he doesn't panic. When opportunities arise, he's ready. When others chase trends, he stays unmoved. His wealth becomes a quiet shield, a soft foundation, a form of safety that radiates through every decision he makes. But the book doesn't just offer admiration, it offers challenge. It asks you to look at your own habits, your own spending, your own relationship with status and comparison. It asks whether your financial life is built on intention or impulse, whether the gap between what you earn and what you spend is widening or shrinking, whether your choices today align with the future you hope to experience. And these questions linger, unsettling but transformative, because they point to something powerful. The millionaire next door is not a rare anomaly. He is simply someone who learned to master behavior instead of being mastered by desire. You begin to see that wealth is not a sprint but a temperament, a way of thinking, a way of living. And this book gently teaches you that anyone, truly anyone, can cultivate that temperament. You don't need a high income to build wealth. You need consistency. You need restraint. You need to care more about your future peace than today's pressures. You need to understand that every dollar you don't spend becomes a seed, and every seed has the potential to grow into something far larger than the pleasure it could have purchased in the moment. Wealth is created in these tiny exchanges. Ego traded for freedom, impulse traded for intention, short-term indulgence traded for long-term stability. And when you begin making these trades consistently, almost imperceptibly at first, the trajectory of your financial life begins to bend slowly, steadily, powerfully toward a horizon where wealth is not something you perform, but something you quietly, steadily become without needing to prove anything to anyone. Because the moment you release yourself from the need to display wealth, you finally become free to build it in its truest, strongest form. And this is where the philosophy of the millionaire next door stops being a description of other people's lives and starts becoming a roadmap for your own. You begin to understand that wealth is not a destination waiting at the end of some distant journey. It is a practice, a daily ritual, a series of small, almost invisible choices that collectively shape the architecture of a future you can rely on. As you move deeper into the mindset the book illuminates, you start recognizing that one of the greatest advantages a person can have is not a high income, but a resistance to lifestyle inflation. The millionaire next door does not allow rising earnings to dictate rising consumption. Instead, he protects the gap between income and expenses with almost sacred intention. That gap, the space where saving and investing live, is where wealth is born. And protecting it becomes a form of strength, a quiet defiance against a culture that pressures you to turn every raise into a new cost, every bonus into a new indulgence. But the millionaires in this book also show something profoundly human. Their wealth did not come from perfection. It came from correction. They made mistakes, but they learned quickly. They adjusted. They built systems that protected them from their own impulses. They understood that discipline is not about being strict, it is about being aligned. When your long-term goals are clear enough, they naturally filter your decisions. And the clearer your goals become, the less tempting unnecessary spending feels. It is not sacrifice, it is selection. You choose yourself, your future, your freedom, again and again. And it is here that another truth emerges. The millionaire next door does not worship frugality. He respects it. He uses it strategically, pairing it with long-term investment rather than hoarding. He knows that uninvested frugality is just deprivation, but invested frugality becomes liberation. The dollars he saves are not stagnant. They are working quietly in the background, compounding year after year with a patience that mirrors his own. That partnership between discipline and time is one of the most powerful wealth-building engines ever discovered. And yet it remains invisible to anyone who equates richness with consumption rather than accumulation. Slowly, you start to imagine what your own life could look like if you embraced even a fraction of these behaviors. You begin to picture a version of yourself no longer burdened by debt, no longer defined by comparison, no longer tossed back and forth by every financial anxiety. A version of yourself who owns not just assets, but autonomy. You begin to see that the millionaire next door isn't a distant archetype. He is a reflection of what becomes possible when you shift the focus of your financial life from external validation to internal stability. But perhaps the most beautiful idea the book leaves behind is that wealth is not about having more, it is about needing less. The quieter your desires, the louder your freedom becomes. When you strip away the urge to impress, you discover that your true priorities rise to the surface with stunning clarity. Family, time, optionality, health, peace. These are the currencies of a rich life, and they cannot be purchased through overspending. They can only be earned through the slow, steady, intentional cultivation of financial independence. And this brings you to a final realization. Wealth is emotional before it is mathematical. If you don't heal the part of you that spends to feel seen, no amount of budgeting will save you. If you don't confront the insecurities that drive you towards status symbols, no income will make you feel secure. The millionaire next door succeeds because he has mastered not just his finances, but his emotions. He understands that money is not a performance, it is a responsibility. It is not a signal to others, it is a promise to himself. And when you understand this, you begin to shift from chasing wealth to becoming the kind of person who naturally builds it. And so, by the time you put down the book, even if you never earned a six-figure income, even if you started late, even if you have made mistakes, you feel something unexpected rising inside you. Possibility. Not the frantic possibility of get-rich-quick dreams, but the grounded, steady possibility of a life you can build piece by piece. A life where you control your time, your choices, and your future. A life where wealth is not shouted, but felt. A life shaped not by chance, but by quiet, consistent intention. And as this new vision settles into your imagination, you can almost picture a future version of yourself calmer, freer, wiser, thanking you for choosing the quiet path today, the path that leads to a form of wealth so steady, so resilient, so deeply rooted in discipline and dignity that no downturn, no trend, no opinion from the outside world could ever take it away.